Would you be so kind as to stand with me for the reading of the gospel lesson? Matthew chapter 15, verses 21 through 28. In the lectionary that I usually use, it is designed so that in the Old Testament readings, if you read them, we don't have time to read them all in the service this morning, but if you read the Old Testament lesson, the lesson from the epistles, and the New Testament lesson, you will get through the entire Bible, the most part of it, within a 3-year cycle. The reason I use it also is because it gives more of a discipline to the study of the Word and to preaching, and it forces the minister and the congregation to look on some things that are pretty tough, like today. Jesus left that place and went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then a Canaanite woman from the region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But he, talking about Jesus, but he did not answer her at all. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away. She keeps shouting after us." And he answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." He answered, "It's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. It will be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly. The gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. How'd you like to preach on that text this morning? In 2007, Ken Burns developed a miniseries, and it was aired a miniseries entitled "The War." It was a 7-episode, 14-hour documentary focused on the effects of the Second World War on the lives of people in 4 towns across America. They were Laverne, Minnesota, Mobile, Alabama, Sacramento, California, and Waterbury, Connecticut. It told of the lives of the men from those towns who fought in the various battles in Europe and the Pacific during the most devastating and costly war in human history. One of the men whose story was told was a gentleman named John Gray from Mobile, Alabama. Mr. Gray was drafted in the Marine Corps in 1943. He was a black man, assigned to the segregated section of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And then he was assigned to the 51st Defense Battalion, a battalion made up of all black Marines. He served 19 months overseas in the Pacific and was fortunate to survive. After serving his country in the worst conflict in human history, he returned home. He told of his return to the South, where that as he walked the streets, many people called him boy, a racial slur. He was told to go to the back of the bus if he was allowed to even ride. He was called every racial term he had experienced before the war, And he had hoped that after returning to his country, after faithfully serving in the worst and most horrific war in all humanity, maybe things would be different. But they weren't. He related the story of how he walked down the street one night crying. So disappointed because nothing had changed. John Gray did not allow that mistreatment to ruin his life. He used the GI Bill to graduate from college. He married and raised a family and became a school teacher. In 1970, he became a school principal and retired in 1998 after serving 50 years as an educator. On the 6th of April, 2010, he died at the age of 87. Now, I would hope, and I have absolutely full confidence, that no one here would have treated John Gray or anyone like him in the way John Gray was treated when he got back home. I think we're better people than that. And I think we would be greatly offended if someone would be talked to like that simply because of their race, their skin color, or where they were from. And then we come to this very difficult story of Jesus and the woman of Canaan. And we listen to how Jesus spoke to her. She comes pleading for Jesus to help her poor daughter who is suffering terribly. Listen to what Jesus says. I was only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's bad enough. But when she came again pleading her case and knelt before him, he said, it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. F.F. Bruce is a British biblical, or was a British biblical scholar. He wrote a book entitled The Hard Sayings of Jesus, meaning that some of the things that Jesus said were very difficult to take in. To which I would reply, as anyone who has read the Gospels and read the sayings of Jesus in any serious manner, I would say, I don't know very many of them that are that easy. But this one takes the prize. This one takes the cake. I've never read one that seems to be more rude, more inconsiderate, without compassion. And from the lips of the master himself. I didn't make it up. I just read it. Jesus and his disciples had been traveling through the region of Tyre and Sidon. They were the places where in the Old Testament the Canaanites were from. Those are the ones who rejected the faith of the Israelites and worshiped idols. They were anathema to the Jews, who rejected them as being unworthy of the revelation they believed that God had given only to the children of Israel. The rabbis, with all of the things that Jesus criticized them for, the rabbis and the scribes at least were interested in following the law as carefully as they could, and they expanded the law of God given to Moses, trying to ensure it was kept, giving directions on how it was to be followed in excruciating detail, and also adding a few exceptions along the way too. The Mishnah and the Talmud were two volumes that were written in expansion of the Ten Commandments that provided detailed guidance and it grew to over 36,000 pages. Kind of like government regulations, isn't it? Do you ever, I don't know, maybe you're not like me, and I don't do anything wrong intentionally, but every year when I submit my taxes, I get concerned about it. Not because I'm trying to cheat anyone, not because I'm trying to do anything wrong. I spend a lot of money on that TurboTax for them to go through everything and make sure I get a thumbs up and a green so that I haven't done anything wrong, because I don't want some stone-faced IRS agent showing up at my door someday. You know, it's not that you would intentionally do anything wrong, but you can't help it. The scribes and the Pharisees were adamant that these laws be kept, and you were unworthy of God's mercy if you didn't. This poor woman, I mean, she had all kinds of strikes against her. She was a Canaanite who the Jews despised. She knew nothing of the Jewish law and was ignorant as how to even begin complying with it, let alone efficiently. She was a woman who, unfortunately, in that culture was at the very best a second-class citizen. Yet listen to how Jesus treats her. First of all, he ignores her. One of the greatest snobs a person can give to another one is to ignore them. I remember at a particularly difficult time in my life when some of my, what I thought were my good friends and all, you know, if they would have called me up and just challenged me, they had told me I needed to get my act together and all that, I could have accepted that. But just to be ignored. How bad is that? Then he says this incredibly rude statement about giving the bread of the children to the dogs. Jesus often showed anger when dealing with people, such as the time, for example, he turned over the tables of the money changers at the temple because they were overcharging the people who had come to worship. He was angry. He called the religious leaders who opposed him and laid heavy burdens on other people without lifting a finger themselves to help with anything. He called them hypocrites, whitewashed tombs, blind guides, snakes. Even then, it wasn't hatred for them, but exasperation. They were hindering others from coming to him and receiving mercy. But this is so different. His harshness appears to be to someone who comes to him sincerely, begging for help. And that's how she gets treated. In studying this passage and trying to figure it out, make sense of it, I came across several scholars who offered different perspectives. Some said Jesus was just in the process of learning his ministry. He had not fully grasped yet that his mission was not just to the Jewish people, but it was to everyone. He was still in the learning process. That's one view. Others say this woman got the best of it. As they were having this exchange, she succeeded in matching wits with him. And thus he granted her request because she checkmated him. I can't accept either one of those views, because if we say that Jesus was just learning his mission and you had not yet fully grasped his purpose, then we leave the door wide open to say of anything he says that we happen to not like, oh, well, he was just developing. He hadn't fully comprehended his mission yet, so we can just ignore it, forget it. Jesus was very critical of the Jewish leaders Just look at the verses immediately preceding this one in the same chapter. Don't look at them right now, listen. But later, look at those verses immediately before this. Jesus is very critical of them. And in chapter 16, just the next chapter over, we see that. We don't have to search through the Gospels for that. Just look at the text surrounding this story, and we see that displayed prominently. We can also see clearly. Jesus says here, only sent to the lost sheep of Israel. But yet we find that before this time, those who were far away from the Jewish tradition, he helped them. In Matthew chapter 8, we read the story of the Roman centurion who begged Jesus for help with his servant who was suffering terribly. Jesus said, I'll go heal him. To which the Roman centurion says, I do not deserve to have you under my roof. Look, I'm a man of authority. I say to this one, go, and he goes. I say to this one, come back, and he comes back. You don't have to come to my house. Just say the word. What did Jesus say? I tell you the truth, I have not found anyone in all of Israel that had such faith. Jesus was talking to a Roman for heaven's sakes. They were the ones it was thought by the Jews that when the Messiah actually came, Rome would be overthrown and they would be the kings and they would rule the world in righteousness. And one of the reasons Jesus was rejected, because he never did that. Never made any effort to do it. No, I see no evidence that Jesus was learning his mission or growing into his purpose. Well, okay, then what do you do with this troubling story? Have you ever in your life had someone remind you of something you said that you wish you hadn't said? Perhaps it was something you said in anger or at a time when you judged someone harshly and unjustly. They reminded you of what you said. Now, they may have reminded you out of compassion to help you see how harmful that is and don't do that anymore. Or they may have just been mad at you with retribution. That's what you said. Regardless of what the motive is, they throw your words back in your face. Probably the most famous Christmas story ever written is the story entitled A Christmas Carol, written by Charles Dickens in 1843. I don't think I've ever in my life read anything more poignantly describes redemption, other than what's found in the Bible, than A Christmas Carol. You recall three of the very main characters. One was Ebenezer Scrooge, of course, the miserly and bitter old man who was spending his life accumulating wealth simply for wealth's sake. Then there's Bob Cratchit, his poor clerk, who is a kind, gentle man who loves his family and his fellow man. And then there's Tiny Tim, Bob Cratchit's little son who was crippled and walks haltingly with a makeshift crutch. There have been a lot of movie adaptations of that story. My particular favorite one is the one where George C. Scott plays Ebenezer Scrooge. I think he does a magnificent job in portraying that role. In one of the opening scenes, Scrooge is at the exchange, or what we would call the stock market, on Christmas Eve. He's still negotiating business transactions, even on that holy night. Two men come to him saying they are collecting donations for the poor and needy at that festive season and ask what he would like to contribute. Scrooge replies, "Are there no workhouses? Are there no debtors' prisons? Are there no parish poorhouses?" "Oh, I'm afraid they are," they replied, "all very much in use and full." "Well," Scrooge says, I'm taxed for them. That is my donation. And that is the only donation that you're going to get. But sir, they protest. Those places are so horrible. Many folks would rather die than go there. To which Scrooge says, well, if they would rather die, perhaps they should do so, and thus decrease the surplus population. Later, when Scrooge is confronted with the ghost of his deceased partner, Jacob Marley, as you recall, Jacob Marley, who is in chains from his past life because he, like Scrooge, had been a miser that had never given it up and had died that way. But he says to Scrooge, you will be visited by three spirits: the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas future. As Scrooge is confronted by the ghost of Christmas past, and he looks back at his life and the opportunities of joy and love that he had wasted and were now gone, it begins to get his attention. When the ghost of Christmas present comes, they go to Bob Cratchit's house on Christmas morning, where they are invisible and unheard. Scrooge witnesses the love and tenderness of the family as they enjoy a very meager Christmas feast. Scrooge doesn't pay Bob Cratchit that much, so it's only just a meager Christmas feast. But yet they do that with love and tenderness so lacking in his own life. Strangely, Scrooge is moved by the scene. He moves over to the little crippled Tiny Tim and says, tell me, spirit, will the child live? The spirit says, I see an empty seat at the table. I see a family's heart that is broken. I see a crutch that now has no owner. Scrooge says, no, say it isn't so. If these scenes remain unchanged, the child will die. But if he dies, and thus decreases the surplus population. Scrooge bows his head in shame. You use my own words against me, he said. To which the spirit replies, well, perhaps in the future, you'll be more careful about how you use them and think about what the surplus population is. It could be, in the sight of heaven, that you are of less value and more worthless than millions like this poor man's child. He threw his words back in his face to let Scrooge know how they sounded and how cruel and uncaring they were. Have you ever thought that this might be exactly what Jesus is doing here? The disciples just told him, for heaven's sakes, send her away. Yeah, Jesus says, send her away. I don't come for people like her. It's not right to give the children's bread to dogs. Is that what you really want to say, fellas? Is that what the attitude you really want to have? Listen to your words. She has called me Lord twice. You haven't done it at all yet. I know Jesus had compassion on her. He said to her, woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted. Jesus, in my opinion, was throwing the disciples and those who heard him, throwing their words and attitudes back in their face. Rude. Is Jesus being rude? perhaps it is one of the most dramatic, if not the most dramatic example in all of Scripture. That she, like everyone else, is welcome at the table. Amen.